Hi there, welcome to Sunnyside Journals. I'm Catherine, and I have a flip through today of a journal that I recently created from a 98-year-old university textbook on sewing. This book is 5 3/4 inches by not quite 8.5 inches, and it is 1.5 inches deep. I have put in a new text block from used materials, and I have done the binding with a hidden hollow back spine here. What that means is that the text block is suspended between the two shoulders of the book, and that makes it easier for you to write in it because it'll lay nice and flat for you while you're doing your work, and it just makes for a nice finished professional looking book. I restored the spine so it's nice and strong again. It was a little sad. It's 98 years old, so I don't blame it one little bit. This book, at some point or other, was owned by a woman named Marie Bronson, and she was attending, according to her writing inside this book, she attended the University of Connecticut in at least 1924. And I was actually able to save her signature and her handwriting. And when we get to that, I'll show it to you. This book was published in 1922. And I have sort of followed the color scheme of the cover here with these beautiful golds and black. And you'll see it throughout the book. Here and there, just golds and black, and I think it made for a really elegant book. This paper came from a book on Art Nouveau wrapping papers. So both end papers match, and again, are a beautiful golden color with little hints of black here and there. There's hummingbirds on it, and I think they turned out really pretty. Everything in this book is from repurposed sources. I make my junk journals from junk. So just in case you're wondering, there are no digital prints in this book. There's one piece of scrap paper, but even that, this is it. I found it at a thrift store, so it was repurposed. The only new thing in this book, before we even get started going through it, is the threads that I used to sew in the signatures, the glues that I used to glue things together, the inks, if I used any ink to distress it, the inks are new, and this one little bulldog clip. Although it looks old, it's new. Everything else, all these papers, laces, ribbons, you name it, are all from secondhand sources. And that can be a thrift store, it might be an antique shop, it may be an estate sale, Facebook Marketplace. It could even just be that a friend of mine said, hey, I'm going to get rid of this. Do you want it? And quite often I'll say, yeah. So to create a dramatic overlay for the opening of the book, I've actually used the page out of a book on the history of Remy Martin cognac. And I think that looks really pretty. And again, you'll note that the colors just match perfectly. The golds and blacks look really nice. This block here is actually from the original first page from the original book. Same with this very fashionable young lady here. I fussy cut her from a color page out of the original text block. Here's some vintage trim along the edge. Again, I've made a little tuck spot from an illustration that was in the original book. And I also made a tag out of original illustration from the book, and you can journal on the back. I've done a lot of sewing with my sewing machine, which I thought was rather appropriate for a book that was originally about sewing. I've left most of the threads long. You can trim them off if you're not, if you don't like thread tails, but if you like them, leave them be. All the papers that are tea-dyed, I did myself, except for one piece of paper that's tea-dyed. I got it from Happy Mail from a friend of mine, and she tea-dyed it. This is the original first page of chapter 1 of the original text block. So I added a pattern paper ruffle, and a fussy cut pair of shears. This music came from a 1921 music book. This is a piece of stationery, lavender with lavender illustration on it. This is a vintage greeting card, an actual vintage greeting card. And it says, "Congratulations and best wishes." And I imagine that Marie, who went to university in 1924, hopefully received a lot of congratulations. For a woman to attend university then, what an amazing thing, an admirable thing. This is a vintage doily that I've turned into a pocket. And you'll see here, there's a little rusty safety pin, and then there's a little dangly heart charm on it. Here I've created the illusion of a cabinet card. I made this. I used the photo out of an old 1908 book on actually opera singers. This opera singer is actually Nellie Melba, who was an Australian opera singer. But I imagined that perhaps if this was indeed Marie Bronson's book, that maybe she brought along a photo of her mother. So I pretend that maybe this is Marie's mother. Her name was Lillian, and she was a school teacher. And here is where I was able to save Marie's signature. She added her address. Waterville, Connecticut is actually now part of Waterbury, Connecticut. And she even was wonderful enough to include the date. So 1924 there was when she was using the book. It was published in 22. And I thought that turned out really pretty. So I've tucked that right in there. And then because Mrs. Bronson was a school teacher, I just added a little detail at the top with an alphabet strip there, and then a little definition of the sewing machine from an old book. And I've held it in place with some genuine yellowed cellophane tape that I saved off of various things. When I find old boxes and old pages that somebody has taped together, I peel the tape off and reuse it because it's so beautiful. This is from the original text block. Same with this color illustration, came from the original book. Here's some tea-dyed ledger paper. This is the tea-dyed paper that my friend did. And it's from a travel agency that was in Buffalo, New York. And I just imagine that if Marie was savvy enough to go to university in 1924, hopefully she also used her time off to travel the world. I made a little pocket out of a buttons envelope, of an old buttons envelope, and I tucked a few things into it. I made a bookmark out of a buttons card, and I backed it with some extra of the wrapping paper that was used to create the end papers. And then I made another tag out of an illustration that was in the original text of this old book. And here you'll see, here's the bulldog clip that I said is brand new, but I've made it look old. And then I added a beautiful black and gold ribbon to it, and I think it looks really pretty. And it is holding a tag that I created over here on the other side. Oh, this is part of an old file folder, a business file folder. And I thought that made for an interesting center spread. This is from a page out of the original textbook, and I added a fussy cut lady from a Sears Roebuck catalog and some fussy cut Victorian flowers. And that was the actual price of this hat, and I thought she looked lovely. You'll see lots of space for you to journal and make this book all your own. Another journaling space that I created for you, just to show you what you can do with this book for the pages that have printing on them and you're wondering what you can do. You can add old paper over top, and then you can collage. These are from a 1950s craft magazine that I have. I made a little tab up here from a cloth measuring tape, which again I thought was appropriate for a book that has a little hint of a sewing theme in it. And I specifically cut the inch at 24 because that was the year that Marie wrote her name in this book, 1924. On this side, I made a little pocket with some leftovers from the end papers, and I fussy cut an old sewing machine illustration and some lace and a button, and just made a little collage there that I think turned out really pretty. And it's holding some more tags that I created from illustrations out of the original book, and they can all be journaled on the back. And then I also tucked in some coffee-dyed bridge score sheet for journaling on. Here's some ledger paper that is tea-dyed, and it has a little bit of a flip out on it that I created, adding another illustration from the original book. This is a page from a day book from 1985. I just happen to like it because it has the days of the week listed in 5 different languages. I put a permanent ribbon bookmark in this book so that you can move it around to wherever you need it. And I also added a little satin tassel to the end. And again, all these things I find them at thrift stores and little shops here and there. Here's a page from Edith Holden's book, The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady. This again is from the original text block showing pattern making, the chapter on pattern making. On this side of the Edith Holden page, I created a little tuck spot area using a tea-dyed envelope. And in behind is a pocket. And for the time being, I put in some journaling cards that I created from some old playing cards. And they have some pretty Edwardian ladies on that. So I tucked those in there for now. You can put whatever you like in there. And then inside this envelope, you can open it and close it over and over again. And I just tucked in a little piece of tea-dyed paper. It's actually the offcut from this sheet over here. So I just tucked it in there. But you can put whatever you like in there, and then you can reclose it right behind that little mouse who keeps guard. This lady came out of a British woman's magazine that I have from the 1940s. And I just loved that beautiful plum color of her outfit. And that flips out for more journaling space. This page is from a 1940s gardening manual that I love, that I have. It's from the original text block. I created a tuck spot here using another old playing card. I liked it especially because it was in the spirit of the warm yellows and blacks. And then the greens in the flowers matched this lady's lovely green suit. So, and then I tucked some little pieces of note paper behind there just to show you what you can do with a little tuck spot like that. This is from the original text block from the old book. This page, this spread, is actually from an old vintage photo album, the kind that you used to use the little black corners and put your photos in that way. And I've left this blank so that you can enjoy doing whatever you like with it. Now on this side of it, I put some old vintage brocade. It's just beautiful, lush with sequins. And I created a little charm from an advertisement from that British magazine, the same one from those ladies came out of, for a perfume called In Love. And apparently that was one of the Queen Mother's favorite perfumes. And this beautiful lady here, who looks very much in love, came out of that same advertisement. And I just loved how beautiful her ball gown looked. And I wondered if Marie might, keep a scrapbook of her favorite fashion trends. And this is from, again, the original text block. And I just loved, and it was totally a coincidence after the fact, that all these colors match this lady's beautiful gown. I love when things like that work out. This is from a calligraphy book. This is from a 1940s how to draw book. Again, from the original text block. I created a pocket from a 1950s sewing magazine. And then I created a little notepad from a vintage packaging from elastic. And I added in some paper that was just offcuts from another journal that I had previously made. Even some little teeny tiny red brads. Even those I found on Facebook Marketplace. And I added this sassy looking young lady to the front. I thought she looked very charming. And then there's another piece of coffee dyed bridge paper that you could journal on. This is a page from a day book from the Canadian artist, nature artist, Alida Karstad. This is a menu from an old menu from the hotel, the Prince of Wales Hotel in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, Canada. It's a beautiful hotel if you've ever been there. It's being completely restored from its old glory days, and it's just a gorgeous hotel. And I found this menu in with a bunch of other restaurant menus in a little bundle in a thrift store, actually in Niagara Falls, Ontario, one day. And I liked this page. It's the wine menu. This is also from the original text block. This is from a gardening manual, the Manual of Gardening. On this page, there's a flip out that I have extended with a Rolodex card. And I've added a ticket and a little fussy cut pin cushion and a little bow. And then there's a postcard here. First of all, I liked that the colors went along with the black and gold theme, but it also was about railway travel in Europe, and it mentions Paris and Bruxelles and Amsterdam. And I just, again, hoped that maybe Marie, in studying fashion, had the chance to go over to Paris maybe and do a bit of traveling. This little rusty clip that I, although it wasn't rusty initially, I made it rusty, but it still came from a thrift store. On this side, I created a pocket from an old library card catalog, and I liked the topic of it because it was the political status of women in the United States. And it must have been an old book because the author, Bertha Rumbaugh, was born in 1876. I made a couple of tags from pages out of the original text block. So the backs of these were illustrations in the book, and I modernized them somewhat with some 60s illustrations from some magazines that I have from the 60s. That's the same young lady that is on the little notepad that I made out of the elastic packaging. The other side of the menu from the Prince of Wales Hotel. This is from a reprint of a Sears Roebuck catalog. And I often wondered if maybe Marie got started using her old grandmother's manual sewing machine. My mother certainly did. This is from a pamphlet folder for LaSalle Business University, and it's from the 1940s. And I imagined that maybe after Marie finished getting her first degree at the University of Connecticut, that maybe she wanted to pursue some more learning and maybe get into business savvy with her sewing and designing. Here's a little flip out here, and I added a fashionable little lady from a magazine there. This is a vintage photo slide, and somebody actually, the previous owner actually wrote grad on it. And if you hold it up to a window, you'll see that in the picture, somebody is graduating. They're all in their black robes and they're crossing the road. And I thought that was quite appropriate. So I imagine that maybe Marie's in there somewhere. So I fussy cut a little Victorian type flower and added that to it. And then I've just tucked it in here in like a little secret place inside the book. And this is a vintage playing card. Again, the gold and the black theme. And here we come to the end. This is also from the original text block, and I just loved it so much. I wanted this to be at the end because it's just so pretty. On the other side of the Sears Roebuck sewing machine, I made a little tuck spot here. And this is just from a magazine that if you wanted to subscribe further, you could fill that out and mail it in. So I made a tag out of it. And then as ever, Sunnyside journals always go home with a Two Nanas bookmark. So I've tucked that in there too. And then on this side, this was actually a coin envelope that I changed into sort of like a little banker's envelope. I added a brad here and reinforced it. And then inside, for the time being, I put an index card, but you can put whatever you like in this little secret envelope and keep things private. And on the front is an advertisement out of an old McCall's magazine from the 1940s. And I thought that turned out pretty. Here I put a mat behind it and put in the original copyright date. So you can see that originally the book was published in 1916, but this particular book was published in 1922. So that's it. This book, as you can see, has lots of journaling space, plenty of room for you to actually make it your own. I just got it started and added a few little things because I can't resist. But it will be available in my Etsy shop, so if you feel like it, you can find the link down below and go over and take a look. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this flip through. Take care.